Brock Lesnar is not a man who cares about pleasing people. He never has been. In every interview, every promo, every appearance, he has carried himself with a cold, blunt honesty that strips away the glitz of professional wrestling. When he says something, there's no sugarcoating, no carefully rehearsed line to protect an image. And that same brutal honesty has brought him face to face with one of wrestling's most polarizing figures, Hulk Hogan. For decades, Hogan stood as the symbol of wrestling itself, an all-American hero wrapped in red and yellow, beloved by children and praised by mainstream media. But Brock Lesnar's career, his presence, and his words revealed a darker truth. Hogan wasn't the hero fans believed he was. He was the architect of one of the most politically toxic eras in wrestling history, and Lesnar, by his very existence, exposed him. To understand the power of that revelation, you have to look at how both men shaped wrestling. Hulk Hogan defined the 1980s. He wasn't just the face of WWE, he was the face of wrestling around the world. His popularity transformed the business from small regional circuits into a national juggernaut. Every pose, every flex, every "whatcha gonna do, brother," turned him into a household name. He headlined WrestleMania after WrestleMania, appeared on talk shows, cartoons, and movies. Kids wore his shirts, parents cheered his values, and Vince McMahon built an empire around him. But while the cameras showed a smiling hero, the locker room saw a very different man. Wrestlers whispered about Hogan's ego, his refusal to lose, his constant demands for the spotlight. And those whispers grew into resentment. Behind the curtain, Hogan was the master of politics, ensuring his own success even at the expense of others. Brock Lesnar walked into a completely different role. He didn't need charisma, catchphrases, or fanfare. His legitimacy was his calling card. An NCAA Division I heavyweight champion, the youngest WWE champion at that time, and later the UFC heavyweight champion. No one else in wrestling's history had conquered all three mountains. Lesnar didn't need to exaggerate his strength or pretend to be unbeatable, he was. His career became proof that real accomplishment could silence even the loudest gimmicks. That authenticity came crashing into Hogan's world on August 8, 2002. On SmackDown, the two met in what was supposed to be a transitional match, designed simply to build Lesnar's credibility for his upcoming showdown with The Rock. But what unfolded was symbolic. From the very beginning, Lesnar manhandled Hogan. He didn't treat him like a legend. He shoved him across the ring, stripped off his bandana, and asserted dominance. Hogan's signature "Hulk Up" sequence drew cheers, but it didn't matter. Lesnar crushed him with a bear hug, squeezing the life out of him until he passed out. And instead of letting the finish speak for itself, Lesnar took it a step further, smashing Hogan with a steel chair and leaving him bloodied in the ring. That wasn't just a scripted finish. It was a message. The mythology of Hulkamania was no match for legitimate strength. For fans, it was shocking. For insiders, it was cathartic. Years of frustration with Hogan's backstage power games seemed to be answered in one brutal moment. But Lesnar wasn't finished. Over a decade later, in 2014, he would deliver another blow, this time not physical but psychological. WWE had set up a celebration for Hogan's 61st birthday on Monday Night Raw. The atmosphere was nostalgic, full of legends like Ric Flair, Roddy Piper, and Scott Hall. It was meant to be a tribute to Hogan's legacy. And then Lesnar walked out. With Paul Heyman by his side, he circled the ring, staring down the icons one by one. When he stopped at Hogan, he leaned in and growled, "Party's over, Grandpa." Heyman, always quick to twist the knife, mocked Hogan's catchphrase, "What you gonna do?" It was unscripted. It was raw. And it enraged Hogan. Backstage reports said he was furious, ready to confront Lesnar, until John Cena stepped in to calm him down. That wasn't just a verbal jab. It was the culmination of decades of resentment. A blunt declaration that Hogan's era of backstage manipulation and self-preservation was over. To see why those words mattered so much, you need to look back at Hogan's history. In 1986, Jesse Ventura tried to form a union for wrestlers. The goal was simple: better pay, health care, retirement benefits, basic protections. Hogan ended it before it could begin. He went straight to Vince McMahon and exposed Ventura's efforts, killing the movement before it had a chance. The fallout was devastating. Ventura left, wrestlers continued to work without security, and Hogan walked away with millions, including a WrestleMania 3 payday bigger than the entire roster combined. That betrayal came to light during McMahon's 1994 steroid trial, when Ventura testified under oath. It was proof of what many already suspected: Hogan wasn't just selfish, he actively harmed the livelihoods of his peers to keep himself on top. Lesnar's philosophy couldn't have been more different. He didn't play politics. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He didn't pretend wrestling was anything other than what it was. When asked about his approach, Lesnar explained simply, "I'm not a man of many words. That's why I have someone talk for me. I'm not out there to feel emotions. That's ridiculous." Where Hogan relied on theatrics, Lesnar relied on honesty. Joe Rogan once marveled at his athleticism, pointing to his NFL combine numbers: a 4.7-second 40-yard dash at 283 pounds, a 35-inch vertical jump, and 30 reps of 225 pounds. "It's insanity," Rogan said. "No one's ever done that before." Even Hogan, in a rare moment of honesty, admitted Lesnar was a genetic freak unlike anyone else. And yet, Hogan clung to his political games. In WCW, his creative control clauses gave him the power to dictate outcomes. The infamous Finger Poke of Doom, in 1999, where he and Kevin Nash staged a farcical match, became a symbol of everything wrong with WCW. At Starrcade 1997, Hogan refused to lose cleanly to Sting, botching what should have been the most iconic moment in WCW history. Steve Austin wanted nothing to do with him, refusing potential matches because he knew Hogan would never do business fairly. Mick Foley accused Hogan of burying younger talent. The stories piled up, painting the same picture: Hogan always looked out for Hogan. Lesnar's return in 2012 told a different story. He didn't demand special clauses or guaranteed wins. He positioned himself as a legitimate threat, yes, but one willing to play his role for the good of the product. Ending The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 30 wasn't about boosting Lesnar's ego. It was about creating a storyline that would reverberate for years. Lesnar understood something Hogan never did, that sometimes the biggest stars make the product stronger by sacrificing their own image. The locker room noticed. The Undertaker himself once described Hogan and the NWO as a cancer, warning that their egos poisoned the environment. He admitted he had concerns about them returning because he had seen firsthand the damage they could cause. Lesnar, in contrast, was respected even by those who didn't like him personally. His blunt honesty made him predictable. He negotiated hard, he worked hard, and he didn't play games. Meanwhile, Hogan couldn't stop rewriting history. He told outlandish stories about wrestling 400 days a year, being scouted for Major League Baseball, or partying with John Belushi after WrestleMania 2, despite Belushi dying years earlier. When Lesnar returned to WWE in 2012, Hogan repeatedly lied in interviews, claiming he was Lesnar's first opponent back. In reality, it was John Cena at Extreme Rules. Hogan wasn't even working for WWE at the time. But he clung to the lie, repeating it in interviews and even on Joe Rogan's podcast. Fans mocked him relentlessly, pointing out how desperate he was to stay connected to moments he had nothing to do with. Lesnar didn't respond. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than Hogan's fabrications ever could. Then came the scandal that ended any illusion of Hogan's heroism. In 2015, leaked audio revealed him making racist remarks, using slurs, and openly admitting, "I am a racist to a point." He spoke about his daughter's relationships in ways that disgusted fans. WWE acted immediately, erasing him from their website, pulling his merchandise, and terminating his contract. The All-American hero was unmasked as a hypocrite. Lesnar never faced such scandals. He didn't pretend to be a saint, so there was no mask to slip. His authenticity, even when harsh, kept his reputation intact. When Hogan died in 2025, media outlets didn't just celebrate his accomplishments. They reminded the world of his controversies, his betrayals, his racism, and his lies. His obituaries were split down the middle, half triumph, half disgrace. His legacy became a cautionary tale. Lesnar's legacy, however, is cleaner. Not spotless, no one's is, but real. He's respected for his dominance, his willingness to tell the truth, and his refusal to play political games. Even his reclusive nature, his dislike of crowds, his choice to live behind an 8-foot fence in the middle of nowhere, reinforced his authenticity. When Stone Cold Steve Austin asked him why he didn't like people, Lesnar shrugged and said, "That's just who I am." That honesty, uncomfortable as it was, became the foundation of his career. And that's the real revelation. Lesnar didn't need to accuse Hogan of anything directly. He didn't need to tear him down in interviews or write a tell-all book. By simply existing as everything Hogan pretended to be, legitimate, authentic, powerful, successful, Lesnar exposed Hogan's flaws for all to see. Hogan was the myth. Lesnar was the reality. And that contrast was more damning than any promo. Hogan built his career on the illusion of superhuman strength, a hero to kids everywhere. Lesnar proved what true superhuman ability looked like, tested in cages, fields, and rings. Hogan thrived on politics. Lesnar thrived on performance. Hogan lied to preserve his image. Lesnar told the truth, even when it hurt him. In the end, one man's career was defined by manipulation and scandal, while the other's was defined by authenticity and respect. The awful truth Brock Lesnar revealed about Hulk Hogan wasn't in a single line, a single match, or a single insult. It was in the decades-long contrast between what Hogan pretended to be and what Lesnar actually was. Hogan wanted to be remembered as a legend. Lesnar forced the world to see him as a politician. And when the dust settled, history proved that the myth of Hulkamania could never stand against the reality of Brock Lesnar.